Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ryan. I'm flanked by a couple of nerds today.
I'm Ted.
And I'm Dave.
And today we get our sleuthing hats on as we talk about the pros and cons of running a mystery game in your RPG.
But before we get into that, though, go down to the description below. Sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get gaming tips delivered straight to your inbox, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
And some sweet clues.
I feel a little left out because I'm not wearing a sleuthing hat.
Yeah, we should be wearing
the Nerdarchy official. My sleuthing hat is at home.
Yeah, you know, if I knew we were doing this video, I would have brought my Sherlock Holmes hat.
Nice.
I mean, because it's good to have one as a...
Ted probably has one around.
When you have Sherlock Holmes emergencies, do you need...
and you need the Philip Posey pipe that you have to lay down here.
Yeah. I used to have a pipe, but I can't find it. And it was strictly for dressing up as Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. Well, you know, these are important things.
So what do we want to tackle first? The pros or the cons?
Well, I mean, may as well start out with the positive, I guess. So, I mean, a pro is it's kind of a different thing from a beat 'em up, kill everything in the dungeon sort of situation. You know,
if you're talking typical Sherlock Holmes, you're not engaging in lots of combat here and there. Yeah, some of the new movies have him being quite the fighter, but the typical investigation situation is like you're piecing together these clues. You're trying to solve a crime, solve a mystery.
It's good for people that like puzzles and combined with a lot of role playing.
Yeah. Well, the combat is incidental to the mystery solving.
Yeah,
it's just like, all right, these thugs realize that we're on the trail of what they're doing, and they're looking to physically stop us, and that could happen.
And it could be actually add to more clues for solving the mystery. So.
Right. They might have some things on them. So, I mean, it really is a nice change of pace. It will intellectually engage your players quite a bit more than your standard gaming fare. What else can we think of on the pro side of this equation?
Well, I don't know so much as a pro, but I would definitely make it more about problem solving and figuring things out than dice rolling. Because if there's game mechanics for investigating and finding clues like that it's all well and good, but it is more interesting, and if you make it more interactive than just dropping the die, where you give them stuff that they have to try and figure it out,
put it together.
Yeah,
in that instance, I'll be like, oh well, my character's really good at investigating. Okay, well then, a successful check doesn't give you the answer. It gets you a hint. It gets you a further clue to lead you down the correct thought pattern. But you don't want to have everything solved by the dice rolls, because that takes away from the air of the game.
Yeah. So actually, I had some investigation in my Father Winter's Day adventure, the Cringe Who Stole Father's Winter's Day. They can find, so there's spoiler alert there. They find like all these different clues that will like really key them into like what the final encounter is going to be, and the more time their characters spend around town collecting clues, like the clearer picture they know what's going to come in the end as far as that goes. I mean, or they can get just a certain number of clues that like push them off in this direction to go follow things and not really know what they're going to run into eventually. Right. So I mean, that happens. It was just like what the checks did for them is they found like samples of things, and like one of them is they found enough samples of stuff to realize that like it all came from this one region, this one mountainous pass. Like there was a certain sort of pine tree and like the soil and this and that. So
you also played in a mystery game, right?
Yeah. So someone actually did do a Sherlock Holmes RPG. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it was called Baker Street. So that's the setting.
Was this Gaslight something or other?
The production company or the publisher. I can't remember the
or the name of the game.
Yeah. The game was something along the lines of Baker Street.
Okay,
it was pretty cool. So like he had mechanics that would occur, and it was strictly in the world of Sherlock Holmes, and you played very characters. Like my character was like a chimney sweep, and like he had things that played with the class systems, as in like socioeconomic. Like my character was like a working class poor guy basically, and so there's some characters that were more noble and some that were like more middle class, and so that sort of affected your interactions and your just your ability to be able to talk to interview certain people successfully. And then there'd be these scenes where you could actually look for clues, and maybe you failed the rolls and didn't find enough elements, but you could take more time. But what happened was there was started to be a time clock that after you spent so much time looking for stuff, the enemy had taken countermeasures, and so the more time you like dicker around doing things, the more intense like later on encounters are going to be, because like, you know, they start to realize you're onto them or this or that. So,
I've tried to run games where, you know, villain has a time clock and the players have a time clock, and it never works out well for the players.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean,
if you like, maybe that style game worked well, but
it was like a one shot, very much confined to like the scenario, as it were. I think too, like, you know, the exact progression the players need to take. The players don't know that; they're figuring it out. And then, you know, then we'll be tied to the people that like also discover this other random hook that they get sunk on. They want to look into that too.
Yeah, which is very easy to do. I'm like, you know, something like 10 books deep into, you know, a couple different steampunk series, right? And you know, one of the tropes for steampunk is alternate fiction. Is very much a part of that, which is really cool because it uses, you know, characters from real characters from history.
Yeah, historical persons. Yeah.
You know, a big part of these series really is a lot of investigation and mystery, and you know, usually, you know, they're trying to solve these problems, and you know, of course, you know, there's action like interlaced through it, because, you know, what good conflict doesn't have action in it?
Well, and it's also when if you were playing a role-playing game, you want a little bit of action, some fighting.
Yeah. So, but you know, the most of it is, you know, more like a chess match of trying to figure out the puzzle pieces and fitting them together. And so, you know, so that's like, so one of the pros I would say is there's good resources out there for writing this kind of adventure. You know, and you know, whether it is straight up mystery books, or if you want a little more action, you know, in it, you know, there is some good steampunk books you could read. The Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences is the one series that I'm reading now, and then there's the other one is Richard Burton and Swinburne, The Adventures of Richard Burton and Swinburne, which is another one by Mark Hoder that's really good for that kind of stuff.
And so, I mean, I never got into this, but there's like the Dan Brown like Da Vinci Code series and stuff like that. Well, that's him, a guy with a bunch of clues, because you kind of extrapolate that and change what that is in the context of your game. You could also, I feel like I heard this one resource might have been on Happy Jack's RPG podcast, which is a good RPG podcast. They talk about a thing that's it's like called 1 Minute Mysteries, where it's basically these little like clues that you're given, and like that should inform the person being able to solve what's meant to be. So you could take like those ingredients and like sprinkle them through your adventure, and like give some other clue hammer clues to help your players find what it is that, you know, that you're trying to have them do ultimately or solve. Because you want your players to actually solve the mystery by the end of it.
Yes, that's the purpose.
So yeah, you want to make them obvious enough that they'll eventually get it.
So let's look at the flip side.
The cons.
The cons. Now,
so you were talking about the progression, the time clock definitely could be a bad thing for your players.
Absolutely. I like I said, I've run those kind of games, and if you have, the players aren't aware of what the end goal is, because, well, that's the mystery they're trying to solve, and the villain is aware of his own plans, potentially aware of what the players are doing. You know, anytime they're running off of the same time clock, if the villain has any kind of intelligence, it's going to be a win case for them.
Well, not only that, you're writing it like the villain is God, because it's basically the GM, and so I think some of that creeps into there, whether we like to admit it or not.
Right. So you need to be. I'm saying it so that you need to be careful.
Rein it in. Yeah.
You know, so obviously the villain is going to be a legitimate person as well. So there are going to be things that can hold him up, tie him up, or her, to not just be like, okay, well, I'm going to skate through because the players made a mistake here or missed this clue there. So you can have it but I would not have it on the same scale. So for every 2 time blocks, if you will, that the players are working on something, he can have one where he gets something, so that the players can have the ability to actually catch up once they get the clues.
And if you're doing it, you need setback mechanics for the villain as well.
Yeah.
And also, you should let the players know this is happening in game
Somehow, yeah.
Yes, somehow. Like, the first one's a gimme to the villain, but then, like, there should be some consequences that happen so that the players know what's going on.
Yeah. But the problem is, depending on how obtuse it is, like, that thing, like, there's going to be something about that information that becomes the red herring that further delays them. Like, oh, well, let's look into this thing that we're hearing about. And then, like, meanwhile, the villain's over here, I win. Yeah. So it's kind of tricky.
I would also say that, a con is, or pro and con, however you want to look at it, is going to be dependent upon the players. What kind of people do you have at your table? Are they seriously into this? Are they intellectuals? Are they the kind of people that are going to be able to put clues together? Or do you have a bunch of people that need to be spoon-fed the information?
Yeah, it's not going to be super satisfying if they're not as investigative types themselves.
So don't run a mystery game if your players are not going to be capable.
If they're completely hack and slash or combat, wanting to be combat monsters, that's not going to be a fun game for anyone involved.
And then, of course, I would say another con is going to be writing those little bits and pieces and coming up with, your clues to lead them down the right path. If they manage to find a clue but aren't seeing it, do you have the ability to give a little, tip or hint to get them there without making it blatantly obvious?
Yeah. Like, even if they find the thing, but, like, they fail the roll to give them the information about the thing, like, put in the NPC or something that they go to. Give, like, some fail-safes, like, several resources for things to, like, all right, if they fail, they can go here and guaranteed get the answer. They just have to talk to this NPC. Moving the story further should not contingent on 1d20 dice roll. That's...
Basing things on dice rolls will ruin your game faster than anything, especially a mystery and investigation type game. I would say a big con, it could be a pro too, is NPCs. I feel like you need more of these, and they have to be a little richer,
a little more fleshed out.
Yeah, because in a mystery, the characters are more than likely going to need to interview people. And I think that should be a big part of that kind of game. And so it's a little more work for the DM because you're going to need a variety of people.
You need several. And then you're going to have to be ready to wing some of them, too, because they're going to ask about this random guy that you didn't think about, like this random person somehow.
Should be prepared to either do a voice or describe a voice for some characters. Characters should have their own... Every character does not want to divulge all the stuff, so there's always more mystery involved. Extra layers deep. So, like, you typically are going to have NPCs that have their own secrets that they don't want to divulge, because that's the type of characters that you interact with when you're doing these kind of things.
Yeah, I feel like an NPC in this kind of game requires a little more depth than you might have in a different genre.
In another type of game, like, instead of just having, like, oh, what are they good at, what are they bad at, and, like, 1 or 2 traits, like, now you kind of have to think about, well, what's their alibi, and for when this thing was going on. So that's kind of...
What's their alibi? What's their connection? What are they hiding? What clues do they have? What's their motivation? You've got all these different things.
Affiliations, so that is going to put some more burden on you. Also, the skirting the line of making the mystery somewhat challenging, but not making your references so obscure that your players have no chance of actually figuring it out. So I would actually caution you towards making the clues easier to solve than, like, doing these super obtuse things, because unfortunately, if you give them a mystery that's too hard for them to solve, they're just going to get frustrated and not actually solve it, and then you're going to have to put this Deus ex machina of actually pointing them in the direction, and that's going to be even worse. So, like, kind of Homer Simpson of it where you're like, okay, well, here's, like, a stick, and here's a base, and then here's a cup. Oh, look, it forms a catapult when you form these things together. Like, make it, like, simple enough that when they put these components together, that, like, they can kind of see the image of what it's supposed to be.
Whenever you read a mystery book, usually the protagonist is an exceptional individual. And unfortunately,
when most of us aren't with that gift.
Right. When we're playing an RPG, then the only alternative we can compensate with is through mechanics and dice rolling. But in itself, that's very unfulfilling as well. So you're gonna have to.
Oh right, I rolled a 17 tonight.
You're gonna have to find the middle ground of, what are my players' capabilities and what can they handle. But the truth of the matter is, like, here's the caveat: if you play a mystery games long enough, like if you're doing that genre.
You probably get to be better investigators yourselves. Like in real life, you start the CSI shit when you walk into a room. Yeah.
But you baby steps.
Yeah.
And don't worry about the complexity of it in the beginning, as long as you and the players are enjoying the game that's happening.
Yeah. So I mean, all that is sound advice. I mean, is there anything else we can think to need to add to this, or is this mystery solved?
I would say case closed.
All right, there you go. So, by all means, like, comment, subscribe.
And also some comments.
Make some comments, yeah. Yeah, all those things.
Stuff.
You can check out funny memes over on Facebook.
You can also hang out with us at nerdarchy.com, the forums.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.